Joining us is Professor Wayne Lesperance, Professor of Political Science at New England College. And Wayne, I want to continue our conversation on politics in this election and focus on the road to the White, or not the road to the White House, but getting to Washington.
Sure.
CD1, CD2 in the Senate race. What are the storylines coming out of those races?
I think the first storyline on CD2 is that this is, if there were any doubt before, this is a blue district. CD2 is a very blue district. It's built for Democrats to win in. I think that Marylinda Garcia, her particular ideological brand was probably not a good fit for CD2. I think she ran a pretty good campaign with very little money. I think she'll be back doing something else down the road. But it's pretty clear that Annie Kuster, despite having fairly high negatives, was the beneficiary of a Democratic built district in a time when Republicans are doing very well. I think that she will serve, and we'll see who else comes along in CD2. But I think one of the takeaways here is Marylinda Garcia will be back.
So tell me about Garcia. Did she do better than you would have predicted with the polling data that you looked at?
We had it as about a 10-point race, and that's about what it was. So it was fairly predictable, and I would say that our numbers for that race were remarkably consistent over time. Other districts, CD1, for example, was much more volatile in terms of voter reactions. We saw a lot of movement there. Initially, in fact, Carol Shea Porter had a lead over Frank Gitta. He came and topped that. So Garcia's results were, I think, what we expected. I think one of the questions they have to ask is, had they had more money, had they had more resources, could they have closed that lead? And I'm not sure. I think again, her particular points of view ideologically made it tough for her to win in this district. So
in CD2, the ideological points of view that you think make it tough, is it the social issues or the economic issues?
I think it's social. I think that was the focus against her had nothing to do with economics, had nothing to do with jobs. It was all the gender stuff. I mean, the portraying her as an unacceptable choice, particularly when it comes to women's issues, women's health. That was a storyline that the Kuster folks used, and they beat her over the head with it all the time. Because they had the money to do so. And Marylinda Garcia, I think, tried to make a credible response. But what we found is that throughout the campaign, especially towards the end, she was constantly on the defensive. If you go back and watch the debates, she was put in a position to try to defend herself. And when you're in a position of defending, you're not in a position of moving forward. So, campaigns 101 is don't spend all your time trying to fight off the other guy's attacks. You've got to move forward. You've got to tell people what you're for, right? As much as you're responding to those pushes from the other side. And I don't think she really got a chance to do that well. And that's to the credit of Kuster's campaign. They ran a very tough campaign. Something else about that, Marylinda last night in her concession speech said something to the effect that she wasn't really prepared for just how negative, how nasty the race was going to be. And I think that speaks to sort of the newness she has towards running in a big campaign.
Well,
like
and the
this.
primary, I think, wasn't a love fest.
No, and I mean, you'd have thought
she went through
with Gary Lambert, you would have thought she would have, gotten used to it then. But yeah, I think part of this is an experience. She's relatively young, and like I say, I think she'll be back and she'll have learned some lessons from this.
Does she have to moderate her stance on some of these core issues, or does she have to say, "Look, this is who I am," and let the voters decide?
Well, that's a tough question. I mean, we want authentic people. We want people who have integrity, and so you can't modulate your position and to suit the moods of the electorate. Otherwise, you get accused of being a flip-flopper and not authentic. But I think if you want to win in the second CD, some of those positions she took, particularly on social issues. I think the Republican Party in general has to come to terms with issues around gay rights, in particular, because I think particularly with young voters, this is something that they just don't buy the argument, the morality argument about that. So I think that's one place where she would have an opportunity to sort of have her opinions evolve, and people would be willing to accept that.
And I guess part of me, when I think about the Republican Party and some of the caucuses within it, I see that sort of libertarian streak that's in there. And I would have anticipated, maybe I'm naive here, that group would say, yeah, this is not the government's issue.
And that certainly would have been a way to go. But she, in some ways, embraced both a liberty-based approach and a socially conservative-based approach. And I think that's what she ran into some trouble. I think you can certainly make the case as a libertarian to say, I may not like it, I may like it, doesn't matter, government doesn't have a role in this. And that would have been an okay answer. I think people can live with that. That's not the way she chose to go, though.
We got 30 seconds left. The Republican Party and CD1, are we going to see a rematch?
Gosh, I hope not. I hope the people of CD1 get pitchforks and torches and say, no more, we're done with it, we don't want to four-peat. But why not? I mean in 2016, we expect there'll be much more friendly Democratic map. There'll be much more push on the Democratic side because of presidential.
I mean, if I were her, I would be considering
Absolutely.
it. Hey, we're out of time.